Hello, I'm Ciarán Lynch and welcome to OviCast, the Teagasc Sheep podcast. Each episode, we bring you latest insights, advice and technical updates for the sheep industry. This week's episode, we're joined by Michael Gottstein, Head of Sheep in Teagasc, to discuss the new sheep improvement scheme launched by the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. We discuss how to apply for the scheme and options for new entrants. We discuss how the reference number is calculated for each flock, and Michael discusses the tasks involved for both lowland and hill farmers and explains in detail the new genotyped ram task and how this will operate. Finally, Michael reminds producers of the application process and how to apply in time before closing. We start off with Michael outlining the time frame for the scheme and the payments available.
Sheep Improvement Scheme has been launched. The terms and conditions are out there and the portal is open, so people can apply for it, Ciarán. And it's basically a follow-on from the old sheep welfare scheme. Instead of €10 a ewe, it's now €12 a ewe. It's a very similar type system. The farmers apply and basically then have to carry out two tasks and then get paid €12 per ewe, provided they do everything correctly. I suppose the thing with it a little bit different is that in the previous scheme, I suppose people would have got an application form, and whereas now it's online, so it's kind of following on from all the schemes. It's an online application on your ag food account, and people who don't know how to work that system to talk to their advisor. I suppose in exceptional circumstances, if people make contact with the department, I think there's probably a way out there. But the scheme basically requires people to try to do it online anyway.
That is a bit of a change, Michael, from the last time. And just the time frame on applying for, like, it's a 5-year scheme. When do you have to have it applied for by?
Yeah, so the deadline for application is the 19th of December. So if you're not in by that date, then you're out of the scheme. And what's more, you're out of the scheme then. If you're an existing sheep farmer, you're out of the scheme for the 5 years. So any farmer who is thinking about joining the scheme, you have to join in year one. You have to join this year if you want to be eligible to participate in the 5 years. You can't say I'm an existing sheep farmer. I have sheep at the moment, and I'm not going to join this year, but I'll think about it next year. That option won't be there for people to join next year if they don't join this year. The only people who can join Ciarán throughout the scheme are new entrants.
Okay. I'll just clarify that when you mean it, but it's important just to note this is not just a rollover of the sheep welfare scheme. It's an entirely new scheme you have to apply for.
Absolutely. New scheme. There'll be no rollover. There will be no form coming to anyone in the post.
Okay. Look, you touched on new entrants, and there might be some existing farmers that weren't involved in that. And it's a question we often get, Michael. What is a new entrant in this case, and what is the story with somebody that maybe wasn't involved in the sheep welfare scheme previously?
Yeah, so, okay, for starters, I suppose, people who weren't in the sheep welfare scheme and have kept sheep, they're just seen as sheep farmers, existing sheep farmers, and they're eligible to join the scheme. I suppose new entrants then are different. I mean, new entrants are traditionally people that are new to farming, or new to keeping sheep, or in the case of people maybe who have had a herd number for a long number of years, but haven't had sheep for a period of time. So they could also be deemed to be new entrants. So the new entrants category, it's basically people who are setting up a farm or are holding for the first time, and that's anyone who's doing that now or has done it in the preceding 3 years. So they have the opportunity to join as new entrants. They have to have all new farmers must meet the educational requirement in terms of a level 6 or equivalent award. And then basically there is the option there, I suppose, for people who have had a flock or herd number for a longer period of time but haven't had sheep for the last 3 years. Then they're basically deemed to be new entrants as well.
Okay, so we can certainly see some of those. Look, you touched on €12 a ewe at the beginning as the new payment. Determining that reference number, Michael, how is that going to be arrived at?
Yeah, so when you go onto your ag food account, the department will have the last 6 censuses up on the system, and you'll see them. That's the number of breeding ewes that the herd owner will, or the flock owner will have returned each year will be listed. So for the last 6 years, and they pick the highest 3 years and average it. So it's an average of the highest number of breeding sheep submitted in the census, in the annual census, in each of the last 6 years, and they pick the highest 3, take the average of it, and that's your scheme reference number. And that's the maximum number. That's your scheme payment reference number. So that's the maximum number of sheep that you can be paid on. So for argument's sake, if a farmer has a scheme payment reference number of 100 ewes, then the most that farmer can get paid on is 100 ewes. Now, there is one exception to that, Ciarán. If somebody had to increase their stocking rate as a result of complying with a commonish framework plan to do with acres, then they would be allowed in that circumstance to increase their scheme payment reference number to meet the requirements of the proper grazing of the commonage area under the commonish framework plan under an acres program. But other than that, for the vast majority of farmers, that is the maximum number of sheep that you can get paid on. Now, you can submit less than that. You don't have to go to that number. So if, for argument's sake, a farmer had a scheme payment reference number of 100, but only had 85 sheep currently, breeding females, breeding ewes, then the farmer can submit those 85 breeding ewes in the census this December coming, and that will be the scheme reference number for that year. So that's what that farmer will be paid on. If the following year then the farmer decides to go back up to 100, the farmer can, provided the farmer hasn't changed the scheme payment reference number, the farmer can then go back up to the 100 by just simply submitting a census with 100 breeding females, and the payment then will be on the 100 females.
Okay, so that's slightly different than the last time in some ways. I suppose, just as a slight aside to that question, Michael, should that farmer dip below that number during the year, would say have to reduce for some reason or other, I assume it's the same as the last time, he needs to notify the department during the year these numbers are significantly reduced.
Yeah, so look at it. It's the number that you're applying on the number of sheep that you put in your census is the number of sheep that you're applying to be paid on in the scheme, provided obviously that it's within the scheme payment reference number, that you're not over that level. If you go below that, you need to, and you're not replacing them, the sheep, then you need to immediately notify the Department of Agriculture, because your payment will be reduced. You need to maintain that number of breeding ewes for the entire year. And for farmers that retain their own replacement ewe lambs, those ewe lambs will be suitable to replace ewes leaving the flock, provided that they've reached 12 months of age. So once they become hoggets, they can step in if a farmer is culling a number of ewes in the summertime and has hoggets coming in from last year. They can take the place of those ewes for farmers that breed their own replacements.
Okay, so that's an important aspect of it. Look, in terms of the nuts and bolts of it, the task, Michael, broadly similar to the last one with some of the new additions?
Absolutely, yeah. So very, very similar tasks there. So again, look at the same as with the sheep welfare scheme. The scheme is flocks will be divided into either lowland or hill flocks. So that'll your designation will be based on what you have submitted in the census. So if you've submitted more than 50% of your breeding females, your ewes, as hill sheep, then you'll be designated a hill flock. Or if more than 50% or greater of your ewes are designated as a lowland breeds, then you'll be designated as a lowland flock. So there's basically two categories of actions that each flock needs to complete each year. So it's a category A action and a category B action, same as in the sheep welfare scheme. So for the lowland flocks, for example, here in the category A actions are lameness control, mineral supplementation to the ewes post-mating, or a fecal egg count. So for lowland flocks, we need to take 2 fecal egg counts from the lambs in the June to September period. And then basically that's telling the farmers whether they need to dose or not. And obviously dose their sheep accordingly. So those are the 3 category A options: lameness, mineral supplementation to ewes, not to lambs, to ewes, and fecal egg count of lambs, not of ewes. Okay. The category B actions then that the farmers have to pick one from is scanning and recording of those results, and or fly strike control. And in one of the first 3 years, every farmer has to buy a genotyped ram. And in the lowland situation, that's a ram that is genotyped and star rated by Sheep Ireland. So it has either 4 or 5 stars on either the terminal or replacement index, and is scrapie genotyped type 1, 2, or 3. So every farmer that has less than 150 ewes will have to buy one ram in the first 3 years of the scheme. If a farmer has more than 150 ewes, so from 151 ewes and upwards, they need to buy 2 rams in the scheme. And in those years, the farmers need to select the years in which they're going to purchase those rams at the outset. And in those years, then they don't have to do the category B action. So the ram task becomes your category B action in that year. So maybe to explain that a bit better, Ciarán, if again we take a flock here, 100 ewes, and I pick the lameness control action as a category A action, and I pick the scanning and recording the results as my category B action. So in the year 1, which is 2023, I decide I'm going to do the lameness control and the scanning and the recording of results. And as I'm putting in my application form, I say that in year 2 of the scheme, so in 2024, I'm going to purchase my genotyped ram that I need to purchase to be eligible for inclusion in the scheme. So in year 1, lameness control and scanning. In year 2, I'll be doing lameness control, but instead of scanning, I'll be buying my 4 or 5 star terminal replacement ram that is scrapie genotyped 1, 2, or 3. And that ram then basically satisfies that category B action. And in year 3, then 2025, I go back and I do my lameness control and my scanning and recording of results.
Okay.
For the hill flocks, Ciarán, it's a different suite of actions. Okay, so for the people that have flocks that are designated as hill flocks, the first action there in category A is mineral supplementation of the ewes post mating. So again, that's mineral supplementation of the ewes, the same as on the lowland side, after mating. Meal feeding of lambs post weaning. So that's where we feed the lambs for a period of time post weaning. Or again, a fecal egg count of the lambs. All right. Now it's only one fecal egg count, and that needs to happen within 4 weeks of weaning time. They are the category A actions for the hill flocks. The category B actions for the hill flocks are scanning and recording of results or mineral supplementation of the lambs pre-weaning. Now, where a flock is choosing the meal feeding of the lambs post-weaning, they cannot select the mineral supplementation of the lambs pre-weaning. So in where a hill flock can't pick the 2 of them options, has to pick one and then another one from this category B suite. So again, take an example here. A hill flock with 100 ewes picks the mineral supplementation of the ewes post-mating as a category A action, and picks the mineral supplementation of the lambs pre-weaning as the category B action. Well, in that situation, again, the same story with the ram. The hill flock needs to buy a genotyped ram. So if it's a lowland ram they're buying to run with their hill ewes, the ram needs to be star rated, 4 star or 5 star on either terminal or replacement index, and scrapie genotype 1, 2, or 3. If it's a hill ram, so a Scottish blackface or a Cheviot ram, because there isn't a big population of those that are performance recording, all that has to be done in that situation is the ram has to be genotyped and his sire has had to be genotyped. So it's genotyped and sire verified. That is scrapie genotyped 1, 2, or 3. So if I'm buying a hill type ram, so either a Scottish blackface or a Cheviot, then basically all that has to be done in that situation is I need to buy a ram that is genotyped, that is scrapie genotyped 1, 2, or 3, and sire verified. So he's genotyped, and that genotype is matching him back to his sire.
Okay, so a bit of work actually there for ram breeders as well to get that in place before next year.
Very important for the hill ram breeders that are producing hoggets that they have the rams that they've used, if they have them still left over from last year, the same rams on the farm that they're genotyped, because otherwise they won't be able to sire verify them, the hoggets that are going to be coming on the market next year. And definitely this year, all hill ram breeders would need to be genotyping the rams that they're using to sire next year's lamb crop to make sure that they can genotype those rams next year or the year after and match them back to the fodder. On the hill side of things, really, what we need to do is we need to have the ram that we're selling genotyped, but also the fodder of that ram needs to be genotyped. Yeah. The stock rams, so that we can match them. Yeah. So there is a bit of thinking there for people, and it's going to catch people out, if they're not careful, because sometimes these rams, they mightn't make it to next year, mightn't be around to genotype them when we think it is. So it's very important that people do that as soon as possible.
So Michael, that's the main change in it, and it will take a little bit of thinking about when you're actually going to buy that ram as well in your own system, and you have to pick the year that ram is bought in. And again, for larger flocks over 150 ewes, it'll have to be completed twice.
Absolutely twice, yeah, and in 2 different years. So, the first ram has to be purchased within the first 3 years, and then the second ram after that, and a year after that.
Okay. And again, look, just maybe finally, Michael, that date, it's the 19th of December this year. It has to be applied for and it has to be online.
Yeah. So on your ag food, it's a very simple procedure. You go in, you open up the go into sheep and beef schemes, open up the sheep improvement scheme, tick the accept your scheme reference payment number, provided you're happy with it, accept that, and then basically tick your desired choices in terms of what tasks you're going to complete and record in what year you're going to buy the ram. Okay. So that's what farmers need to do, and do that all by the 19th of December. If you have trouble or can't log on, talk to your either your Teagasc advisor or your private consultant, whoever is doing that type of work for you, and they'll be able to assist you.
Michael, good having you on. Thanks for that update.
Okay, thanks, Ciarán.
Okay, we're going to leave it there for this week. Michael's gone through the scheme in a lot of detail. I have included a link in the description to the Department of Agriculture's dedicated webpage for the Sheep Improvement Scheme, where you can find out a bit more detail about it, the terms and conditions, and how to go about applying for it. That's it for me for this episode. Again, for updates from our sheep row, keep an eye on our Twitter page at Teagasc Sheep. I'm Ciarán Lynch. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tune in to future episodes.